Sounds like some heavy stuff. Hey Ree, how's it going? It's Friday, yeah. So glad it's Friday. Um, Defiant was celebrating your degenerate long profits. I know. You know what? I swear I saw Sharky in the chat like half an hour ago. Oh, he's such a poop. Hopefully he joins. But it's cool. It's cool. We shall live. How's everyone's week been then? I know Defiant's saying that he's made some dollar, which is good to see. See a lot of people also trying to like full port, which it's a little crazy, but you know. Pippin? What's Pippin? Sorry, I'm from the UK and I'm not always with the lingo, so. Okay. Is that even a thing? Let's see. And you know what? Actually, I've heard of that. I swear that was around like ages ago. Damn, what happened to this coin though? Like last Friday it was like 15 cents, now it's 60. Basically did a 4x. How did Sharky find a meme coin that did a 4x? Honestly, I find it crazy that sometimes there's just these random coins that literally pump ridiculously. That's crazy. Weird ass chart, but see, even on a chart like this, which basically has like very little to go on, right? Because it's not got a lot of history. Some history, but not a lot. But you can still kind of work with it a little bit. Um, so maybe Sharky kind of maybe bought on the retest here. Would have been a good time to buy. Obviously, nothing's guaranteed, right? But pretty decent return. He found it at 0.003. Damn. See, he should be balling, right? He should be retired with a Lambo because that's like what's that? Yeah, I mean, you put $1 on that, you get 17 grand. So he's got a Lambo, right? He's done. He's you're short in it. So Sharky's retired with a Lambo for buying it at 0.003, and now we're short him from 0.57. Okay. Mm, I mean, it's not a bad idea to short. Risky, but not bad. Anywho, let us jump to Bitcoin. So, um, yeah, I mean, it's been one of those weeks. I mean, it's actually been quite a fairly quiet week, this February. Um, sorry, I've I've kind of been keeping an eye on charts. I'll be honest though, like it's looked relatively boring up until today, which obviously Friday pump. Friday always pumps. But you know, you can see really from a week ago, Friday, we've just really just kind of ranged, you know what I mean? Like it's nothing really interesting. Um, these blue lines here, um, you could possibly include this area, but I mean, I would say that that is kind of your range area. So, there is a chance we can go down and then go up, but I mean, it's just pretty boring price action. I'm not gonna lie. This is pretty boring. I don't find anything hugely exciting to report. The only thing I might say is that I drew this channel, this downward channel that we've been in since essentially Sunday last week. So, we've been going down, going down, going down, going down, and then broke above it. So that's probably like one of the positive things that I've seen um, today, because I mean, it pretty much manifested like this today. Um, there is a point of control that we have here at around 68,500, 68,600. And you can see that this high that we had, we've broken above it. So that's a good sign because we've just basically had lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, and then higher high. So what we might get, this might be signaling some kind of trend reversal. So higher high, higher low, higher high. Now what I would like to see for a bit more of a confirmation that we've actually bottomed here is a break above 72,400, which is essentially round about where these highs are. So I think if we break above these highs, so maybe if we get something like that, we could watch for higher prices. And I think that would be a good indication that we're bottomed. Now, the one thing I've obviously been saying is I would like to see us have a 5-wave move to the upside. It's quite difficult to say that we've got that here, for instance. I mean, I see that as a 1, 2, 3, 4, but we didn't really get the 5th wave. We got rejected where the 3rd wave top was. So this is definitely, I mean, I wouldn't say that this was a 5th wave. It's very hard to kind of read what this is on the micro time frame. I wouldn't even try to read what this is. One thing we can do is we can potentially see this as a 1-2 setup of some sort. Okay. So if we draw our fibs, and we draw our fibs fairly accurately, so you can see that if we want to see this as a 1-2 setup, we've basically found support between the golden pocket 618 and the 50% fib level. Okay, so we have found support here. Now, if we were to say that this is a 1-2 setup on the higher time frame, we could actually estimate a target. So we could just pull our fibs like so. And our target for a 3rd wave is the 1.382% fib, which literally takes us to exactly, conveniently, $82,000. So if this is a 1-2, then we expect this 3rd wave to take us to 82 grand. Okay, $82,000. Then what I would want to see is I would want to see a 4 and a 5. And that 5th wave, I would want to see it break back above this dark pink trend line, which has been a very important weekly trend line that we have lost. And as you can see, obviously, we've had for quite some time, quite a few years, COVID, essentially. Yeah. So you can see that this was quite an important trend line. Now, if we do get back above it, we can say, okay, fine, this weekly here, all of this price action, essentially between the end of January and middle of February, end of February, well, we're kind of on the 13th, so we've still got quite a fair bit of time. So, maybe a few weeks. So this whole thing could just be deviation, flip, off we go. Um, but again, it's speculative at the moment because we need to get 5 waves on the larger time frame for me to be confident to say, okay, we've bottomed. But I do think that this is quite an important bottom, and I don't think it's going to be easy for Bitcoin to just lose that $60,000 low that was made. If you watch my streams from a few weeks ago, the 100% fib extension for an ABC move to the downside was taking us to around about $56,000. Fib levels here, the golden pocket 618 lines up with about 57,800. We might see it. I'm not super confident that we do hit this region. The only reason I say that is because market makers have got a seriously big habit of front running basically everyone. I've experienced this myself the previous time when we set a long, I think it was like 74,000 something, and I think it only got to like 75,000 or just above it, and we got front run. Now, I'm not saying that, we won't visit this, but there is a chance that obviously people could have been front run quite a fair bit here. And that will become more apparent, as I said, if we break above this 72,000. Let's just say it's about 72,000. I'll put an alert on 71,600, but this is kind of the highs that you basically want to break through, so that you can then have upside continuation to that $82,000 area. So currently it's looking good, but as usual, we do get a Friday pump. The rest of the week has been fairly boring, to be honest. As I said, it's just essentially Bitcoin has just been ranging. We are still in this range, and as I said, until we get a break above $71,600, there's nothing to really get excited about. So I think once we break above that, then we could start to look at, $82,000 as the next upside target for Bitcoin. So that is essentially, and every time I draw these prediction lines, normally they play out pretty well. They don't normally play out pretty well when it comes to time frame because it's crypto. Things move, as you can see, 10 times faster than what I predict it to move. But yeah, if you actually just squish this line up in terms of time, then you would see that we might possibly get this playing out quite well. But we have to wait and see. We have to wait and see if once we break above 71,600, that'll be the third wave. But then, as I said, even if we get to 82,000, we need to get 4.5. And that could take us to 96,000. But we have to get that 4.5, because if we don't get that 4.5, it's just a 3-wave move. And as you know, 3-wave moves, they can always fail. 3-wave moves are not a confirmed breakout to the upside. Now let's take a look at Ethereum. So yeah, I mean, Ethereum is essentially just doing very similar to what Bitcoin is doing. You can see if we look at it on the 4-hour, again, very, very similar thing, right? We want to essentially get above those highs. So let me just show you. Let's do that. Yeah, so that third wave target is taking us to $2,480, which is essentially where we've got the start of this this gap over here that you can see, and a point of control. So again, though, same thing. We want to see Let me just clear this up a little bit, actually. I might just remove that for now, just to make this a little bit more obvious. Yeah, so yeah, essentially you want to just break back above this line here, around this line. So around $2,144 dollars. If we get a break above that, then yeah, we can say more chance that we are going to go to that $2,480 region, which should see around a 15% gain from Ethereum. But again, same thing. We want to get that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then if we get 5 waves, we can look for a 3-wave pullback, and then that could be our setup for much higher prices. Okay. But yeah, this candle that we're forming today is quite a bullish candle. It's a healthy looking green candle, but I mean, as I said, nothing is really definitive until we break above those previous highs. You can see I've labeled this as well from a while ago, ABC. It is likely that, you know, that C wave that I was looking is basically complete. You know, it's a high probability. I wanted Ethereum to get around this region of retest. It went a little bit lower. But you know, this is kind of the point where I would want to see the bulls turn up and actually turn things around, which you can see we might be doing. But it's still very early days, and we've still got this trend line here, if you can see. This trend line, we really would want to try to break it. But there's obviously quite a lot of resistance here. This is going to be acting as heavy resistance for Ethereum, this area here. Let me just type that in. So this is going to be resistance for Ethereum. And that 1.382, I bet you any money, is going to be lining up with a 618, possibly 50% fib. Let's have a look. Yeah. Yeah, it's basically lining up with the 50% fib. And then above that, you got this golden pocket 618 fib. So this area is going to be quite difficult for Ethereum to push past. So expect a lot of resistance here and a lot of selling pressure. If we break above that trend line and if we break above resistance, that for me is a massive indicator that we're going to get higher prices. First target is obviously, as I said, it's going to be around the $3,100 area, maybe even higher, 3,400, and then we can look at possibly reaching all-time highs again at around $5,000. But that again, as I said, all depends on number one, we have to pass this level first, which is $2,144. That's the first level of resistance. Then if we get a third wave up, we can expect that to land at around $2,500, and then possibly 4 or 5 patterns push a little bit higher, maybe even to 2007, 2008. But again, that 5-wave move might not take us past this trend line. So what we might get is we might get a 3-wave pullback, which would be expected after a 5-wave move, and then that's when we might break above that trend line. But I think that March is going to be a very important month. You know, I think this correction has been going on for quite some time now. It's technically been going on since the end of August last year. And you know, I think it's possibly time for a rally, some relief. We were oversold on the daily as well, that you can see, like a week ago. So it is very likely, I would say probably a 70-80% likelihood that was a very important load-up form that I think, you know, even if we jump to a couple of different coins like Link, for instance, that $7.2 region was essentially last resort target, and it was tapped, and it tapped it, and it was oversold on the daily as well. You can now obviously see that we're kind of we're back to where we want to be. Still haven't reached the 9.26 level, which is where I was going to just trim out some of the DCA, but that's fine because again, this is looking quite promising, right? Um, but I could probably remove that fib. But yeah, as I said, you know, we've kind of filled everything that was sold on the 10th of October. So you can see that that candle went all the way down to 7.88 on Binance. We've come and filled that. We've even tapped the 88.6% fib level, which I think is what that was at the time of this larger 1-2 setup to the upside. Um, so, you know, it's kind of time for everything to turn around. We just need to see those 5 waves. We need to get those 5 waves up, and then we can be slightly more optimistic about us pushing higher. So I'm going to go through a couple of the ones that we're currently seeing in. HBAR has been performing really, really, really well. I'm really, really happy about HBAR. You can see that when it hit our DCA, we had like a really, really good bounce. You know, it was like 15%, 20, or whatever it was. I can't remember what it is now. I need to check, but we had such a good bounce from that. And you know, in good profits at the moment. So HBAR is looking quite strong. I think it's actually one of the strongest tokens in the market at the moment. But again, you can obviously see that we have in the near future this pink trend line that we might be bumping into at some point very, very soon. And again, if we kind of do the same thing with HBAR and we estimate where we would want our third wave to end up, our, our third wave comes to around 1.239, which if you put a line there, you can see kind of lines up very similarly to where these previous lows were here. You got also previous low, previous low, previous low, and then we got retest here, broke through, failed. So this area is going to be an area of resistance to HBAR. So very similar theme to what I was showing on Ethereum. This is going to be our resistance for HBAR. And, you know, we can expect to get rejected the first time that we reach this area again. But again, that would provide us the third wave. So if this really is a 1-2 setup, then I do expect that we would get a fairly decent rally in the next few days or within a week. So we might get something like this, and then 4, 5. That's what we want. We want a 4, 5, and we do ideally want that fifth wave to push us out of this pink trend line, because this pink trend line is acting as major resistance. If we break through that pink line, we could possibly look at a retest, and then as I said, we can obviously aim for much higher. Just going to jump on a couple of different coins at the moment. Yeah, same thing for Suri. I think I drew this last time. I mentioned this last time. Same thing. Everything looks very similar at the moment. Everything looks as if we've got possibly a 1-2 setup forming, and this 1-2 setup now we're trying to push higher in a third wave. And you can see here again. I labeled this previously as area of support. It was an ideal target area for Sui to reach. We reached it. We actually dropped quite a fair bit further down, but you know, now this is acting as resistance, and now we need to break back above it to actually show that there's some strength and that we can continue to push higher. You can see on the daily again that wick that had formed a couple of days ago, like a week ago. That again shows that we have oversold RSI on the daily. And I think even if we go back to Bitcoin and we go to where it was here, where it came down to $60,000, we can see that Bitcoin was oversold on the daily. And I have said this multiple times. When Bitcoin is oversold on the daily, it normally means that we are close to some sort of low. You can see the last time that Bitcoin obviously was oversold on the daily People bought it at $80,000. It went back up to almost $100,000. So it's like a 20% gain. Then Bitcoin oversold on daily, went to $60,000. Again, oversold Bitcoin. Brilliant time to buy. Went up to, $70,000. Again, 71, 72. So again, almost 20% gain. So, you know, oversold indicator on the RSI on the daily for Bitcoin is usually a good time to buy because in the short term it could bag you 10 to 15 to 20% gain unleveraged on Bitcoin. But at the moment it's looking good, as I said. We're holding this low, we're defending this low, we're all within suitable parameters. So we bounced off of the 50% or the 618 fib, and we're defending that at the moment. And as I said, this candle looks quite a promising candle. Similar thing with Doge, right? So Doge broke this. It's kind of a trend line. I mean, it's a bit of a weak trend line, but it's a trend line that gives some kind of indication. So, back in May 2021, we had a peak, and then peak in April 2024, broke through it, retested the trend line in April 2025, broke through it with that wick that we had in October, on the 10th of October, and then obviously broke down from it. But now we are trying to attack that trend line again. And obviously you can see that we've got quite a lot of confluence on where that low formed, and also quite a lot of confluence on where we are at the moment. So you can see this was resistance, 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 acting as support. That wick we had on the 10th of October acting as support, and now we are still technically within support. So yeah, again, same thing really. I mean, we could also see this whole downside moved as an ABC pattern. And, if we take that as the wave and the C wave typically have the same length. So and I think I showed this last week. So we essentially map the A wave to the C wave, and you can see they are essentially exactly the same length. So it would be really ideal if this actually has formed a low here, because you can say that we've got an ABC structure, which is a three-wave move down. It's come to ideally a support level, which was the previous low that we had here, and it's the same length as the A wave. So it's pretty much like all stars align, right? I mean, this is like basically the golden area that you want to see a turnaround. But again, as I said, with the parameters that we need to see a five-wave move up, and I've not seen a five-wave move up yet. Same thing with Doge, we would want to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Three-wave move down, and then that could be our setup. That could be our long-term setup for Doge if obviously we want to jump in that. And it could be that we just kind of jump back into this trend line and then retest it and then aim for much higher. Let's touch on a few other statistics like USDT dominance. So yeah, as you can see, USDT dominance, target for it was 9.46%. We pretty much almost reached it. We got to 9.03%. So just a couple of percent out, but you can see that we had quite a strong rejection from that zone, which is kind of expected because you can see that all of these other tops here are pretty much basically almost bang on 9.4, 9.46, and we came extremely close to that. So it was expected that we would get a rejection here. And as you can see on USDT dominance, it's quite hard to measure waves, but you can still see this as a three-wave move for USDT dominance, which means that there is a chance that obviously we can break down and possibly fall out of this range. Now, falling out of the range is going to be challenging because we've been in this range since January 2022, so we've been about 4 years in this range. So I'm not highly optimistic that we'll break out of it from, from the downside here at 3.76%. But what could happen is we get back down to 3.76% to retest range lows. And, getting to range lows might just be the alt season that we see, the final alt season of this bull cycle, which would be, maybe it happens in the next 2-3 months. Um, I've said this before, a lot of the experts and the market makers were calling for tops of many tokens, of many coins, within May, June this year, and then basically foreseeing 2027 as the bear market where obviously things will drop considerably. Some tokens might just be dead in the water completely and not recover, or at least never see new highs. For instance, there's quite a few that are struggling from previous bull markets, right? So, DOT, for instance, is one of them. You can see that this is pretty much almost a lifetime downtrend for DOT. DOT is $1.3 at the moment. I mean, in September it was $5. So, the loss on DOT is huge, right? I mean, that's a 70%, you know, downtrend. I mean, that's a pretty heavy drawdown. Um, so I think people, for instance, who are holding DOT, for instance, I mean, they are, if we just draw a very, very rough trend line, I mean, they are just possibly looking to just get double their money and get out of this, because this is a massive lifetime downtrend, and I wouldn't be wanting to touch this. Same thing with Polygon. So Polygon, we had high hopes for Polygon. Um, Again, just downtrend. I mean, it pretty much reached the area that I was eyeing up, which was 0.2, 0.8, sorry, 0.18, 0.2. Where was that? The 50% fib, yeah, so 0.18. We basically wicked above it, and then that was a straight rejection. That was back in, that was back in January. And then obviously got rejected and making new lows. But again, it's not optimistic for Polygon. There's a few other altcoins that might survive, like for instance, AVAX is a good candidate, but again, AVAX has fallen out of this triangle that we've been observing for the past 5 years. So AVAX has fallen out of that. It has tested these range lows here. So you can see that we are basically just holding on for dear life at around $8.5. And you can see that we didn't have a candle closure below the previous low, but we just had a wick below. So we haven't technically lost support, and there's still a chance that, we can obviously recover, and possibly get to maybe $24. That would see us retesting this trend line that I have here, this pink trend line. But whether we're going to go higher and make new highs, that's very, very tough to say. At the very least, I'd like to see, AVAX retest this trend line, which is at about $25. Again, though, if that happens, that's taking you to May, June, and this is the time, obviously, where people are thinking that the bull market will end. And, nothing is guaranteed. People can guess all day long, but it's not a terrible theory. It is something that is likely to some degree, especially if there's a large amount of market makers who are planning on exiting the market at that point. Okay, that was a lot of talking. I might just look at one more. XRP. So I know there's an XRP army out there. Let's have a look. So yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's really the same thing that I'm seeing. Let's clean this up a little bit, get rid of a few fibs. really the same thing I'm seeing. So, you know, same thing here. We have potentially a 1-2 setup. And then if we want to calculate the third wave target, third wave target is 1.9, which is going to take us here. And then, you know, if you wanted to calculate the fifth wave, normally it's like a fib higher, and that takes us to basically $2. So, um, you know, maybe in the first like week or two of March, we get that third wave, we get to like $2, maybe even earlier. I mean, it would be nice to, you know, by the end of February to get to this level here. So we have a 1-2, show this a bit better. Actually, I will use this. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the fifth wave preferably will either take us to the first fib above the third wave, um, or slightly higher. You've got the 1.786 and the 200% fib, which takes you to around this previous high here at 2.16. So this is kind of like your targets. At the moment, we just want to focus on even getting to the third wave target, which, let me just remove that, is going to be at $1.9. So that's kind of the third wave target that we have at the moment. And then hopefully we can get a 4-5 pattern, and then that can confirm to us that we may be going higher, because then we can watch for that three-wave pullback, and then we can go higher. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I think there's not too much else to say. Just keep an eye on Bitcoin for the next couple of weeks. I think the next couple of weeks are going to be very important. There's just a lot of resistance that Bitcoin needs to push through. The bulls need to do quite a fair bit of work here. I'm going to just get rid of that because that might be confusing. But we have broken above this channel, which is optimistic. Now, as I said, next level to break above is that $71,500 level, and then we could possibly watch to get to $82,000. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you for joining. I know Ree had to go and the Fine had to go, but that's cool. I will do what I usually do and upload this stream to YouTube, where you can see all of my previous streams. And yeah, thanks QLal for joining. Really appreciate it. And yeah, I'm in the chat all the time, so you know, just give me a shout if you ever have any questions to ask or want me to do any analysis on any coins that you see. So yeah, it's weekend now. Safe trading, manage your risk, and have a good weekend. And I'll see you guys next week. Peace out.